Hello and welcome to lesson 2 of week 2. My name is Mildred. In this lesson, we are going to look at source code. We are going to try to understand what a repository is and then look at the application programming interface. Now, when we talk about source code, all we mean is the code you write, the set of instructions we write in the programming language that we write them. So for those of you taking the Python fundamental course, the code you write is a source code. It is the human readable set of instructions. And when we write these instructions, the compiler or interpreter for that language is going to change that code into something we call a machine code, and then the computer can run it and it can do what we want it to do. Now, when we work in the team, or you have a team of software engineers or developers that are working together to create a system or to build an app, we use something called a source code repository. And the repository, most of the time you hear repo, is the storage space for the source code and all of the files that they depend on. When we have a source code repository, GitHub for instance is one, and that's the one we're going to use in most of our courses. We store all of our codes there, documentation, configuration files, everything that we need for that code. And when a group of developers work on the code, there's this versioning which is done with Git, and we can see the version history of who changed what, when it was changed, when it's updated, and you can always revert back to a different version, and you can deploy different versions on different machines if you choose. And so in our free course starting September, Command Line Git and GitHub, we're going to look in detail at how to create our repositories and how we push and pull code from the repository. Alright. So basically you just use the repository to store your code, to organize and to track changes to any project you have, and you can go ahead to sign up for your GitHub account by going to github.com and create an account, since you're going to use this account to store your source code and for several assignments in other courses that you might take. Now we have something we call API. You hear about API all the time. An API is an acronym for Application Programming Interface. You have like a set of rules, and we use these rules and tools to communicate, and the communication is usually between two systems. Now, one example I can give you that will make it make sense is just say you walk into a restaurant and you tell the waiter what you want. Now, you who walked into the restaurant is the user, and the waiter here is the API, right? So the waiter takes your order, which we can call a request, and takes this request to the kitchen. Now, the kitchen is the server in this case. Now, the kitchen prepares what you ordered and gives it back to the waiter. Remember, the waiter is the API, you are the user, the kitchen is the server. Alright, so when the kitchen prepares this, it gives it to that waiter, and the waiter takes it and brings it back to you. So in other words, the API collects information or your question or your request, takes it to the server that holds that information, collects the response and brings it back to you. So an API is just the set of rules and tools that allow different applications or users to communicate with each other. Alright. So there is never a direct access between you, the user, or you who walked into the restaurant, and the kitchen. It's always through the waiter. So the kitchen is the server, it holds the internal code. But because you don't have the direct access to the kitchen, does not mean that you won't get food from the kitchen. The waiter does the back and forth between yourself and the server. All of our advanced courses, we are going to build APIs where we will build microservices, and we'll see how several systems can communicate with each other, how you can get information from one system and display on a different system. So we have different types of API, and we'll look at the three major types. We have the REST, the SOAP, and then we have the remote procedure call. Right, and each of these have their different best practices and what they are suited for most. Now, REST is what we are going to use most of the time, which depends mostly on HTTP requests, which we are going to look at in another advanced course. It is a resource-oriented architecture, and is represented by the URLs, right? And the URLs is the Uniform Resource Locators. So the data is exchanged mostly using JSON and sometimes XML, and we're going to look very deeply at the representational state transfer, REST, as we go deeper in other advanced courses. Now, while REST is most widely used, things like healthcare and financial institution prefer to use SOAP. SOAP is an acronym for Simple Object Access Protocol and uses XML as its message format, and that's why it's most suitable for healthcare apps and financial services or any industry that deals with significant security implications. Then we have one that is less likely used, less widely used, and mostly used for maybe low-level communication, the remote procedure call. It allows a program to execute a function on a remote server. One of the examples of its usage is for distributed systems. So what you hear mostly is REST and SOAP. What you're going to do in our courses is going to use the REST. And so we're going to look at HTTP requests in another course. So all you need to understand is what exists, what the definition is, what it is used for. You don't need to know how to use it in this course. So thank you and see you next week.